everybody. This is Dianne, one half of the Real Housewives of Alaska.
And this is Marnell, and welcome to another episode of Did My Sister Like the Movie I Picked?
Oh, that makes me feel really bad because I picked this movie and I have a bad feeling you didn't like it very much.
You know, there were factors both ways, and we will discuss. I've watched worse. Like we've watched worse. Yeah, we've reviewed worse. I won't even talk about Idiocracy. That doesn't count. I think that was
that was just a complete
decision on both of our parts.
Yeah, complete and utter mismatch.
Mm-hmm. No, but this was good because we've been talking about documentaries on young female singers. So we are here to review the documentary just entitled Amy, 2015 documentary that you can currently get on Amazon for $2.99.
I think I paid $3.99.
That's because you rented it in HD, and I don't rent anything in HD.
Oh, I'm not sure that I had any other choice.
You click on more options to watch or buy.
Oh, well, apparently I'm lame, so thank you for letting me know that.
For future reference. Oh, I'm just trying to keep you from wasting too much money because you're spending it all on clothes now. Clothes and makeup.
I am. Although, I was telling a friend of mine, and I told you this the other night, that thank goodness my OnlyFans channel supports my makeup habit. It's a joke, people. It's a joke.
Or is it? It cost you $19.95 to find out.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I'm going to let you rate it first because I think I went first with the rating for The Stand.
I think you did. So I rented it a 3.8 staged ads.
Okay. We were fairly close then.
Okay, good.
I rated it a 3.5 complicated, sometimes amazing, and sometimes frightful big hairdos out of 5.
That thing had a personality of its own at one point.
It did.
Like, I'm pretty sure it has its own IMDb credit.
So, you remember Will and Grace. I know you do.
Of course.
And people always miss the reference, but there's a thing where, a moment where Karen looks at Grace and says, "Honey, what have you got going on there? Have you got moose and squirrel in your hair?" And that's totally what I was thinking as I was watching the transformation of Amy Winehouse's hair into something pretty scary.
Yeah, and she kept it up. Like, no matter how disheveled we saw her on the streets of Camden, when like her feet were all cut up and all that kind of thing, she still had the bouffant going. I don't was she Gorilla Glue girl hair before Gorilla Glue hair girl?
Yeah.
Like, that thing was permanently affixed, and it was perfect. Like, yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there were times it wasn't.
Well, but even when it was messy, it still looked good.
No, there were times it didn't.
It's not like you could see the netting and construction work going on underneath,
Okay, fair enough. I'll give you that.
Because when a woman does a hair donut thingy, if you don't spread the hair just right, if you have thinner hair like I do, if you don't spread it just right, you can see the donut through, and you could never see whatever she had going on back there. I mean,
do you think it was all her hair, or do you think that there were times when the ponytail was really long down her back and the bouffant was really big on top? I was like, I don't think that's all hers.
No.
Okay.
I think that was definitely because it would be too heavy. That thing was huge. It would collapse under its own weight if it were real. That thing had an orbit. It worked for her, though.
That's hilarious. No, and it was great. And I mean, when she looked great, she looked great. I was like,
Yeah.
boy, I wish I had that cat eye game.
A little too thick on the cat eye. It was bordering from cat to panda.
Oh my God.
Ugh.
Oh. All right.
That's what always happens. Like, you do one eye and you're like, it's perfect. And then you do the other eye and you're like, I got to go and touch up the other eye and make it a little bit bigger because I messed up on this end. And then it just keeps going back and forth.
Then it grows. Yeah.
Yep. And I cannot imagine doing that under the influence of drugs or alcohol. So that's probably a lot of where that look came from.
Oh my God. I can't even do a decent cat eye when I'm totally sober.
Okay. Your cat eyes are like your eyebrows. They are sisters, not twins. Just make sure the bitches have met before.
Oh my God, this is going to be a hilarious podcast about a tragic thing.
We have to put levity into it. It's like, it got heavy there.
Oh, I mean, the whole thing was heavy.
And here I am about to open a drink.
Oh, what are we having tonight?
Sea Donkey. It is a one of the cocktails from Amalga Distillery.
Oh.
It's juniper gin, ginger, spices, and carbonated water.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
It is, and I don't like gin, so it's that amazing.
Wow. I'm having a sober evening, or I will be completely useless as compared to just moderately useless. So
I plan on just being slightly useless tomorrow. It is a Tuesday, Monday.
Oh my God. Tuesdays are always Mondays for me, so.
That's very true.
All right, so I have tons of numbers. So this was released on July 3rd, 2015 to huge critical acclaim. It got 33 award nominations and 30 awards, including...
Oh, crap.
I know. Including Best Documentary at the European Film Awards, Best Documentary at the British Academy Film Awards, Best Documentary at the 88th Academy Awards, and Best Music Film at the 58th Grammy Awards.
Wow.
It is the highest grossing documentary of all time in Britain.
You know, she was Britain's girl.
It had a budget of $3.4 million. It earned $23.7 million at the box office. That's a documentary.
Yeah. A documentary.
Basically grossing like 6 times its cost.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So I was pretty stunned when I read all of that stuff. I was like, dang.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I didn't either.
Amy Winehouse has always like kind of just been on my peripheral. Like, I think she, Back in Black or Back to Black, made it to number 9 on the charts here in the U.S. And so it was kind of like, you know, I've heard not a lot of her music. Apparently, I learned that I had not listened to nearly enough of her music tonight. But yeah, and so this documentary hadn't even been on my radar, and there's actually a number of documentaries about her out there.
There's one that came out in 2020.
Huh.
So I'm not sure that I'll watch it. I feel like I got a ton of Amy Winehouse in this, but yeah.
So, her dad wrote a book about her like a year after she died, and they turned it into a TV documentary.
Was that the documentary that he and her ex-boyfriend did called A Letter to Amy?
I think so.
Because I'll talk a little bit about that, just a little bit, when we talk about him.
Amy, My Daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, and morbidly so, because I really don't want I don't want that in my head. He was an awful person.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
we'll get into that.
We will. A little bit about the director. Of course, there was no writer in this case because it was a documentary. I know that some documentaries have writers, but this did not. The director is a guy named Asif Kapadia. I'm not sure how to say his name. He is a British filmmaker who has done mostly documentaries. Amy is the only of his movies that I've seen, but then come to find out that he directed episodes 3 and 4 of Netflix's Mindhunter in the first season.
Ooh.
Right? Which I loved.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. And this guy has won multiple awards. So.
Okay, there's something that he produced that I'm kind of interested. Stephen, The Murder That Changed a Nation. It's a TV miniseries documentary. It was in 2018. I wonder what that one was. It kind of reminds me of like the trial of the century for OJ. So like curious about that. I may have to look that up.
Yeah, no, and so and we'll talk a little bit, I might as well just say it now. So one of the reasons that the parents agreed to sign on to this documentary is that this guy was really well known for directing a movie called Senna, which I believe was about a race car driver in Britain. So this guy is super famous in Britain.
I can hear you texting.
I'm totally texting. I'm being really, I'm multitasking.
Huh.
I'm so sorry. I'm totally multitasking. So anyway, really famous. We'll talk a little bit more about him when we talk about our anti-hero. So we might as well, our housewives anti-hero.
Instead of a hero, because, well, there were some not bad people in this, like her best friend and maybe that last bodyguard she had. I don't think anyone was a real hero in this. And I mean, hindsight is 2020 and I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here. But like, I feel like more could have been done for her. Like, she started off at such a young age with like just sort of her wild antics. And you know, she kicked drugs, but she never quite kicked alcohol. And I don't think she ever got over her eating disorders. And that, I believe, is what eventually led to her demise, the combination of those two things.
So, you know, kind of launching into talking about her dad as the anti-hero, one of the things that really struck me, because I was into the album Back to Black. I mean, I won't say it was like... I wasn't into it the way I'm into Taylor Swift. How embarrassing is that? But it was pretty heavy rotation for me for a while. And there's a lyric in Rehab where she says... If my daddy says I'm fine, I'm going to quote it wrong. I'm not going to get it right. But she basically is, my daddy thinks I'm fine. I don't need to go, you know? Yeah. And I didn't realize until this documentary that legit was the situation where, you know, her friends and her manager were trying to get her to go. And her dad was like, no, she doesn't need to go. She's got gigs. She's got tours. She's got obligations.
Oh, God.
Right? And Nick Shymansky, I may or may not be saying his name right, was like, that's the point where I really think we lost an opportunity.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was right at kind of the height. It was after I think it was after the arrest of her husband, and like right at the height of her drug use. her dad was like, "Oh, well, we have 8 more gigs, and then she's off for however many months because she's going to be writing her 3rd album."
Right.
But we have a couple that we're contractually obligated to do, and blah. And I'm just like, ugh. And then we cut to the scene of her, I think it was in Belgrade,
Oh,
where
so that was so powerful because I felt like her refusing to sing was the only way that she could control anything. That's the only way because she was basically kidnapped and stuffed onto a private jet and taken to Belgrade to perform. So the only way she could exercise any control was by, like, not singing.
And so on IMDb, there's a claim when you look up this her and it goes to this performance. There's a claim that says the local press also claimed that Winehouse was forced to perform by her bodyguards who did not allow her to leave the stage as she tried to do so. Like, that's awful. Like, I've mentioned the Britney Spears documentary,
Right.
Framing Britney Spears, and it's kind of the same thing that her dad pulled with her, where her dad can make, like, literally every decision for her life, not just financially, but, like, whether or not she can travel, whether or not she can see a doctor, things like that, whether or not she can retain her own attorney for her own best interests. Like, how screwed up is that? But he is allowed to make deals on behalf of her and book gigs on behalf of her. So she's the performer. She's the one who has to perform. And that's actually kind of the way it kind of wound up going with Britney is she's refused to perform until her dad is taken off her conservatorship. And it's the only control that she has. And here we saw the same thing with Amy.
I'm having this moment of being really angry that these young women are in a situation where the only way that they can Smalls agrees completely. The only way that they can control anything is by silencing themselves.
And your hero Taylor Swift does the same thing.
No, really?
Yes. So her previous albums are owned by Scooter Libby, former manager, I think. And she has tried to Scooter Braun, not Scooter
Libby's political. Yeah.
And he acquired her music catalog and refuses to sell it to her. And she's tried multiple times, and she's even tried to have, like, other people purchase it on her behalf.
But I don't get how you're saying that she silences herself like Amy and Britney did.
Well, she refuses to perform those songs, even though they're a part of her. Though she wrote those songs, those are her thoughts and feelings and her words and her music and her lyrics. And she refuses to perform them anywhere because he will get money for them if she does. Men controlling the lives of these young.
I guess I'm prickling a little bit at the comparison of Taylor Swift to Amy Winehouse and Britney Spears.
Or Britney Spears. It's not quite the same. I mean, they don't have complete control over her life or anything like they did with they do with Britney Spears and they did with Amy Winehouse. And Amy Winehouse is because of, she was vulnerable to that. And, Taylor Swift she has a lot of say over, like, everything going forward. But she learned a lot of hard lessons.
She did, but, she also is she's pretty frank about it.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the father Mitch Winehouse just totally grossed me out. When they were in St. Lucia?
Oh, like when he hauled that camera crew. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's basically, chastising her for the the way she behaved to her fans wanting a photo, but she's like, you know, that's basically not what I'm here for. And you've dragged a camera crew here to, you know, film me in some of my most vulnerable moments. And yeah, it was just awful.
So, you know, he just shocked me from the beginning, like when he was like very frank about his multi-year infidelity before he left the family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his behavior was constantly shocking throughout, and what we were just talking about, just his complete disregard for her need for some support and some boundaries. And I mean, his whole just push her to perform and perform and do and do and do and be on the stage and be in the public eye. I did some reading about his kind of the way that he felt about this film.
Oh.
And, you know, as I said, he and his former wife agreed to do it because the director did that documentary Senna that was really huge. And now he completely condemns the director and says that the director had an agenda to make him the anti-hero of the film from the get-go.
Well, it wasn't a stretch.
Right? And so his stuff that he says about the film, he says that there are, quote, basic untruths in the film, that it's, quote, preposterous, that there's, quote, no balance. And he actually got them to agree to edit it a little bit. He wanted more editing, and the crew actually refused to do so, saying that they had over 100 interviews and they felt like they had really good, broad perspective on Amy's story, and that they felt like there was balance and that there was truth that he said wasn't there.
Yeah. So in 2008, Winehouse had an estimated $10 million fortune. Her finances were run by Mitch and Janice Winehouse, and it was reported she was earning $1 million a gig. In the next year, her finances, her fortune dropped to $5 million.
Wow.
Yeah, like her dad. Ugh. And you know, shame on her mom for letting it happen too. I mean, we didn't see much from her.
Yeah, we really didn't see much from Mom. I felt like Mom was really, really like, I don't know. I kind of felt like she
had a wild girl and just sort of let her go because
yeah, and like she didn't have much personality and like didn't have, I don't know. I just felt like she didn't have much presence.
No, so this is sort of what I gleaned from the like 2 minutes that they kind of talked about her in the beginning, was that when Amy's father left after 8 years of infidelity, when he finally left the home, it was kind of up to Amy's mom to, you know, care for the family and, you know, soldier on and everything. And Amy has a brother, so she was basically the single mom of 2 children. And so, you know, she probably did the best she could, and it kind of sounded like Amy was a wild child from the beginning. And I'm absolutely not blaming like the way Europe does anything, but their drinking age is much lower than it is here. But I think, you know, someone who's going to have substance abuse issues is going to find a way to have a substance abuse issue, because we have dry towns here in Alaska and there are still people with substance abuse issues. So, but I mean, having said that, from an early age, you could have access to beer and wine and ciders and things like that. You can't get hard alcohol until you're 18, but you know, that was the thing that ultimately killed her, was was alcohol. It wasn't actually drugs.
So we'll talk a little bit about that too, though, because it was more complicated than that.
But so I feel like maybe her mother was just sort of busy trying to keep a roof over their head. And she had this wild child who had an amazing, amazing gift and who was talented from an early age. She got her first guitar when she was 13 and taught herself how to play. And before she died, the album that she was working on, she was learning to play the drums for that album. So, I mean,
I didn't know that.
She was very smart and very talented, and she had just this amazing voice as a gift. And, you know, you can go a lot of places with that. And if you don't have the right people looking after you or anyone looking after you, you know, it can go in a really bad direction.
And sadly, I think there were people that tried to look out for her, but they didn't have a lot of power, or they were really late in her life.
Right. And I mean, her friends did one of the things that you are told to do with people with addiction issues is give them ultimatums.
Right.
You know,
right. I'm stepping back, but I will be here if you need me, but I'm stepping back because I can't do this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to say about Dad while we're talking about our anti-hero is that he, and this is a little bit that we talked about earlier, and I'm not sure how it's related, but shortly after this film came out, he announced that he and a former boyfriend of hers named Reg Travis would be making a movie called A Letter to Amy to, quote, correct the wrongs and omissions of this documentary. And then in 2016, he actually went on TV in Britain saying that he wanted Adele to win the Grammy that Amy was also up for that year, because he wasn't happy about the way that this film garnered all of the attention and like brought Amy back into the spotlight.
Ugh.
I know. What a monster.
Yeah. And as if we didn't know. You know, I would probably be defensive too, but the more you drag it out and the bigger deal you make of it, the more you keep it in the spotlight and you put the spotlight on yourself. So sit down.
You know, when they showed the footage at the end of her funeral and he was like all weeping against somebody's neck, I just wanted to reach out and throat punch him. I did. I think there were so many people who tried to intervene in certain ways, like her manager saying, I can't do this anymore. And like the executive at her record company saying, we will not let you perform or tour or do anything until you get clean.
When she won the 5 Grammys, the reason why she was not at the Grammys is because she was having visa issues. The U.S. would not let her in because she tested positive for drugs. I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that either. I mean, I thought that they let her perform because she was... I mean, I thought that the record company let her perform because she was clean. And she actually said to her friend, this is so boring without drugs.
Right. And I think what it was is she was probably clean at that time, but she couldn't get her visa in order.
Because of previous history.
Right. And I don't know how that comes about. I don't think they whiz quiz everyone, you know, who needs a passport for the US. But I do remember one of the kids from Stranger Things having the same issue. I can't remember. He was one of the older kids in Stranger Things, or he is. And I can't remember his name, but he also couldn't attend the premiere of, I think, like season 2 Stranger Things because same issue. He tested positive for drugs and had some issues and couldn't get his passport. He couldn't get his visa. So
I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe it's because they are here to work and it's not just a passport issue, it's a visa issue. Maybe it's because of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to say about Mitchell Winehouse?
No. I'd be fine with never hearing that man's name again.
Right.
Him and Jamie Spears. Like,
although if you do the guilty pleasure of watching the movie that he made, do update us. I know, right?
Right.
Okay, so Housewives Weekly is pretty short. I do want to say that I got a message from the Satanic Temple today saying Happy Lupercalia.
Oh.
So Lupercalia or Lupercalia, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right.
I say Lupercalia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a Roman fertility festival, and it's actually was celebrated February 13th through the 15th. So today is the last day of Lupercalia, but conveniently, Valentine's Day falls right in the middle of it, and it is apparently one of the things that happened during Lupercalia was like men got naked and flogged women.
Mm-hmm.
So there we are.
And actually, there are some people who are very serious about, like, because Sabrina the Teenage, or not Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina did an episode about Lupercalia. And so it got a whole bunch of teens and tweens interested in what the heck this holiday was that, you know, guys dressed as wolves and chased girls through the forest and then you had sex afterwards. Apparently...
Alrighty then.
It was not so nice back when it was legitimately celebrated because it was like kind of rapey and brutal. And so, yeah. But, you know, I guess depending on your interpretation of a religious holiday, go ahead and celebrate whatever you want. It's like I don't have a Christmas tree, but I exchange gifts.
I still haven't taken my Christmas tree down, but a hot tip to anyone who's a Real Housewives listener, if I haven't said it already, my Christmas tree is not traditional. It has like zombie mermaids and Walking Dead ornaments and like pink elephants. So, you know, it's definitely.
And so you could celebrate Lupercalia with a gentle flogging and it'd be okay.
I may take you up on that.
Yeah.
You're like, not really sure what to say there. Let's move on.
Well, I'm okay with warding off the evil spirits with the flogging, but I don't think I need to ward off the infertility with the flogging. That's fine.
Oh, no, I don't need to either. I'm 50 and still, unfortunately, that's a risk. So, yeah, you is all I have to say.
Yeah, no.
Okay, moving on. So, I did look up a little bit of Amy Winehouse information, and I don't have tons, but on February 6th, there was an article published saying that some rare Amy Winehouse live tracks were released that day, and they were going to be released progressively throughout the month. And they're from a 2007 performance that she did in London, and the album is titled I Told You I Was Trouble, Live in London.
I love the title.
Well, that's a lyric from one of her songs. So,
is it?
Yeah, the song is I'm No Good, and one of the lyrics is I told you I was trouble, you know that I'm no good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, I was totally jamming on some Amy Winehouse today. Oh, yeah.
I think I need to listen to some early Amy Winehouse.
So what was really cool, and you're kind of stealing some of my bycatch, but here we are. I actually just told a certain unnamed Amazon device to scramble some songs. If I say her name, you know that she'll start doing stuff right now. And so it played a whole bunch of different stuff. And I mean, I knew the stuff from Back to Black. I knew the version of Valerie that she did with Mark Ronson, which was amazing. I love that song. And I'm so glad they closed the documentary with that song. But it also played the song that she did with Tony Bennett, and it played some old, like, 60s girl group songs that she had done. So it was really, I just enjoyed it tremendously, and man, such a range. Such an incredible range.
Yeah, I found myself, like I said, she was always kind of on my peripheral, But I found myself watching the documentary and liking the stuff before she became a hit. So I probably need to go back and listen to some of those.
And I would say that if you have any sort of random device that can do that for you, I'm not saying any names, just doing that, just having that service randomly generate a playlist for you is a good way to go.
I think there is probably an Amy Winehouse station on Amazon
I'm
Music.
sure there is. I'm sure there is. And I would imagine that like Spotify probably has one as well.
Yeah. Best of Amy Winehouse, neo soul icons, classic songs for sad times.
Oh.
Handpicked with Katy Perry, so Katy Perry's playlist.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a ton on there.
Okay, so the only other thing I have in Housewives Weekly is that there apparently was a foundation set up in her name after she died. So it's the Amy Winehouse Foundation, www.amywinehousefoundation.org. And their goal is to prevent drug and alcohol abuse in kids. And a designer, and I can't remember who, and of course I didn't save the link, has just recently released like a line of Amy Winehouse clothing and t-shirts and stuff like that. And the proceeds go to the Amy Winehouse Foundation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that her brother is actually the works full time for the foundation, and I think
that's
he was
crazy.
actually...
I didn't even know she had a brother. Did they mention him in the documentary?
They didn't. No.
Okay. I was like, her brother... did I miss something?
No. It was launched by the family, quote unquote, on September 14th. Of 2011.
Yeah, I am not going to say anything about which family members have actually been active in that, right?
Right. It would have been Amy Winehouse's 28th birthday.
Do you know that last year she would have been 37?
Yeah, because she is 4 years younger than me.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
When they stated her birthday, I was like, okay, she's like 4 years and 3 months younger than me. And it was very weird because I always saw her as like much older than she was, you know, like when I was watching this, I had a hard time remembering that like she was like between like 18 and 25 when all of this happened, you know, and I feel like she was like in her early 30s, you know, she was just like a very old soul.
She definitely was. In fact, there's a quote, and I'll find it somewhere in my notes here, where someone talks about her in exactly that way.
She's a 65-year-old jazz singer in an 18-year-old body.
Yeah, that wasn't quite that. I mean, there was another quote along those lines that wasn't quite the quote, but that's one of the quotes.
But yeah, I mean, it was early to see that in the beginning, like when she was like trying to take a nap in the back of the car. It was early. It was easy to see that she was a young woman there, but there was a couple of times where I caught myself thinking of how immature she was being, with people, interacting with people at times. Then I'm like, oh my God, she was just a baby.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I honestly had no idea how much of a baby she was when she hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel that she had some sort of arrested development issues stemming from
We're going to talk about
leaving.
that. Oh, yeah. So I guess that kind of takes us to our summer, winter, and road construction.
So do you want me to go first?
Yes, because you went first with your rating, and I went first when we did Biters the other night. So,
so my summer was when she was able to get sober long enough to do what was her last recording,
the one with Tony Bennett. Uh-huh.
Yes, and she was just like anytime like Tony Bennett was on screen when she won the Grammy, he was the one that presented and everything, and she was just agape. Here she is, this, multi-platinum artist, sells out around the world, millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And like Tony Bennett comes on the screen and she just freezes. And then when she was working with him, and unfortunately her father talks about this, but she's such a perfectionist.
Oh God, that was heartbreaking, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, watching her be like, no, I'm wasting your time. I need to get this right. I need to get this right.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. But to finally meet somebody who's been such an icon in your life and have them be so graceful. Like, he was so amazing with her.
Yeah, he really was. He was and the way that he spoke about her after her death.
Yes. I mean, he ranks her right up there with
some of the jazz greats.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just loved see him, get to work with him. And it's kind of amazing that was her last recording. So that was my good.
Well, I think our goods were fairly similar. I mean, for me, although you and I both agree that this movie really lost a lot because it was so freaking long. And that's why we both said that we rated it as low as we did. It really made me remember just what an incredible talent she actually was. And it made me remember why I loved Back to Black so much. And like I said, I actually went back and listened to a bunch of Amy Winehouse today and just, oh my God, enjoyed it so much. She's
such a unique sound.
Such a unique sound. She's so dark. She's so smart. Her lyrics are so smart.
Dark, but not broody.
No, not broody, but dark.
Yeah. But it was just the mix of sound between sometimes it's poppy or jazzy or something, and then it's one of those where if you listen to the lyrics, it paints a really dark tale.
So I'm going to say this, and this is from my bycatch, but it kind of goes with what we're talking about. So I didn't realize that Back to Black was all about her breakup with Blake Fielder.
Yeah.
And having that knowledge about Back to Black and that knowledge about all of the songs on that album, except Rehab, of course, it just made it that much more. It made it a deeper experience to go back and re-listen to those songs.
So, and this is kind of in my bycatch too, but that I always got the feeling watching this, towards the end when she was refusing to perform or things like that, and she seemed to. It's almost like she was having to perform these songs that she had become famous. These were her hits, but they were the ones that were the hardest for her because they were about Blake and they were about drugs and all these things that it really would have been so much more beneficial if she could have gotten away from all of that. And here she was, and that's what everyone expected of her, is to sing those hits.
Well, and I thought that was really interesting that they made the comment that someone, and I think it was the bodyguard, made the comment that she just had gotten to a point where those were not relevant anymore. Those weren't her experience anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that she didn't want to do those songs anymore.
Yeah. And that's what everyone expected of her. Oh. All right. So my winter, and we've kind of already talked about it. It was very specifically when they were in St. Lucia and her dad had the camera crew following around because, I mean, she really looked like she was trying to kind of move away from what she had been, where she had been. I mean, even to the point where I almost didn't recognize her because she didn't have her signature hair and makeup.
Right.
She had all the extensions out, her hair was like above her shoulders.
And it was kind of curly, kind of wavy.
Yeah. And no makeup and, walking around like carrying someone else's kid, she looked very relaxed and very like, kind of in a time that you would want to be at your most private. And here her dad was making a documentary out of it.
So one of the things that you actually brought up something for me, and of course this is bycatch again, but here we are. I say that a lot now, but here we are because that's kind of my life. I looked at her a lot throughout the movie, and this was before it was revealed that she had bulimia. She was so painfully thin, and at times she looked really unhealthy. She kind of almost had that...
Hey, get back in here.
Now it sounds like my house.
Sorry, I thought I was muted and yelling at my dog.
Oh my God, that's
camera.
hilarious. No, it totally sounds like we're podcasting from my house. We're doing it live.
Like, right outside the window, barking at the back fence. And they're not barking at Moose or Bear.
And Steve is still incredibly disappointed in you. So
now it's a thing, Steve. Now like I'm just gonna keep it going, keep stringing you along. I'm sorry, I interrupted our bycatch.
We're not even in bycatch. We're still in your winter.
I know,
but I looked at her, and this was before it was revealed that she was bulimic. And she was just so painfully thin, and there were times, excuse me, that she had kind of that little pot belly that someone who's really malnourished gets.
Yeah.
And I just thought, she was beautiful, and when she was really put together, she was really beautiful, but she was also kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
Because she was so unhealthy.
Yeah. There were some pictures that it was like she took from her webcam right before they went to St. Lucia.
Yes, they were terrible.
It was
They were devastating. She looked skeletal.
Yeah.
And I one of the things that I wrote down, which I mean, I'm totally reading into it, but I mean, her family was Jewish. I'm assuming that somewhere along the way she lost family members in the Holocaust, and then I'm looking at this poor woman who looks like she's a Holocaust survivor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's one of the most famous, wealthy women in the world, and she looks like she's a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. And I actually didn't know until this documentary that she suffered from an eating disorder.
I didn't either.
I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, God, how does she stay so skinny? Because she's just so skinny.
Mm-hmm.
But there really, really are some people out there who that is like their baseline. They're just normally thin like that. And especially people who are perfectionists like she was. And she was like, touring and traveling and recording and rehearsing and all of these other things. People have a tendency to, not eat very much or not eat very well, or they just burn a lot of energy. So, I mean, I never read too much into it. But so she's actually spoken about her disorders before. She said, I went through every eating disorder you can have, a little bit of anorexia, a little bit of bulimia, and I'm not totally okay now, but I don't think any woman is. And then there's a longer quote that says, I realize that I have a chance to bring certain things to certain people's attention. I've had a flirtation with every eating disorder there is. I would tie myself down to one. Usually I would be like, fuck it, I'm a musician. Why do you want to talk about that? But I've realized that there's a lot of girls who are exactly the same boat as me. People don't know how hard it is and how common it is and how dangerous it can be. A lot of girls are ashamed, like I was ashamed. I used to make myself sick and be ashamed. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a compulsion. If you can control it, great. If you can't, then you're in the grip of something bigger than you. It's not a physical thing. It's very much a psychological thing, and I'm glad I can talk about it.
I had no idea.
I didn't either. Oh, she would have been so great if she could have just survived.
I know. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the music we would have now?
And just the things she could have done, you know, just telling her own story could have helped young other women. And I mean, it could still, you know, it's kind of the at this point, it's unfortunately the tale of don't follow in the footsteps of.
Right.
Because, of course, she's very famously a member of the 27 Club.
What's the 27 Club? I've never heard of that.
So the 27 Club.
I mean, I kind of have a vague idea, but
it's kind of like a morbid Deadpool type thing.
That's kind of what I figured. Yeah.
Yeah, where a bunch of musicians, I'm not going to find the names, am I? But it's basically like the lead singer to Nirvana, Jimi Hendrix, Mama Cass, people like that. All of these, you know, musicians who tragically died before they turned 27 years old.
Huh.
And, you know, we've talked about Britney Spears, and everyone, when she had her breakdown, she was like 25, 26, and people thought she was going to be the next member of the 27 Club.
Well, I'm glad that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So, since we're on such a down note, what was your winter?
So my winter was another monster in her life. Blake Fielder Civil. I guess that was actually his last name. It's a hyphenated last name.
Yeah.
Her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, talk about a destructive POS. I mean, yes, I know they were on self-destruct together. I'm curious to know what his trajectory has been over the last 5 odd years and like where he's at now. I didn't do a where is he now thing. But he was nasty. Ugh.
Yeah.
And he's part of the reason that she got hooked on crack.
Yeah, he was doing it before she was,
Yeah.
and he gave her her first hit.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just didn't feel like he spoke very lovingly or respectfully of her. And so did he get busted on drug charges? Was that why he was incarcerated?
The specific thing that he got arrested for was attempted perversion of the course of law or something, which I think in American terms is interfering with a police investigation.
Okay.
But I don't know what that stemmed from.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they weren't very clear on the documentary. And like I said, I didn't do a where is he now. Although I think I might look him up on Wikipedia real quick.
Well, I know that he has a daughter, and he named her middle name Jade because that was Amy Winehouse's middle name.
Okay. I think if I were the woman who bore his daughter, I might be a little bit freaked out, but
yeah.
Yeah, he was a creeper.
And in 2019, he was arrested for arson. So that's really recently. That wasn't what he was arrested for in the documentary. He was arrested for arson after making $1.4 million claim on Amy Winehouse's estate.
Oh, he looks awful. Like, the picture that is posted for him, he looks completely cracked out. Sorry, I'm getting a bunch of texts. I need to turn my...
It's okay. So there was a time when he was interviewed, and I don't think Amy had died at this point, and they had the interview in the documentary, and he seemed very chafed about her getting clean and dating this other guy, Reg Travis, you know, and he was just like, well, you know, I'm a good looking bloke, and you know, or he was talking about having to see her in
with
the papers
another,
in jail with another, and he's like, you know, I'm a good looking bloke, and I go to the gym every day, and I'm not on drugs, and you know, all this kind of stuff, and he just, I was like, you are so selfish. He was just awful.
Okay, he refutes the claim that he is responsible for Amy's tragic end, telling Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain in 2018 that Amy didn't do anything Amy didn't want to do. I feel I'm the only person that's ever taken responsibility and has done since Amy was alive. I feel that maybe since the last film about Amy came out 2 years ago, the documentary, there's been a sort of shift of blame to other parties. But I feel that before that, pre that, and probably still now, I'm the only person who's taken any responsibility. I'll always carry a burden of guilt because I feel how I should have acted. Blake was recently arrested for arson.
Yeah, so arrested on suspicion of arson after his off his face 37-year-old set fire to his 7th floor flat curtains and walked out laughing.
What a monster. He did get a payoff after their 2009 divorce for a reported sum of $309,000. Yeah, this was a quick at distractify.com where is he now? Oh, wait a minute. Holy cow. So this is from it's from August of 2012. So he was put on life support and in a coma because of a heroin overdose.
Ugh.
So he survived that, but he looks dreadful.
So in 2019, when he set fire to the flat, it said a couple said he was off his face on drugs and he was more concerned about getting more high than raising the alarm about the fire. Blake asked the Howards, "Are you coming to smoke this crack pipe?" before walking up to the 9th floor, leaving his flat ablaze, and for others to call the fire brigade. So apparently he's still in the thick of his drug abuse.
Yeah. I mean, and he certainly looks that way. The stuff from Good Morning Britain in 2018, he looks awful. And I mean, there were definitely times when they showed him with Amy where he was obviously abusing drugs, but a handsome man.
Yeah. Oh, and they, you know, and again, I have to blame her father for her relationship with men. You know,
right?
Like, she had a really toxic relationship with her father,
I agree.
And I think that just sort of morphed into a very codependent, toxic relationship with men because she dated Pete. Wins?
No, like Doherty.
Doherty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she kind of had a toxic relationship with him, and you know, it luckily didn't go, you know, to the point that it did with Blake, but yeah, she just, yeah. And the scene where they were all cut up and bloody because like he threw a fit in the room and broke a bottle, and then she cut herself because she's like, whatever you do, I do.
Right.
Oh, I'm just, the toxicity in that relationship is just heartbreaking.
Yeah. So that was my winter. That was my bad. Wait until we get to the road construction. So what was your road construction?
So my road construction was a good road construction. It was when Blake went to jail and Amy got clean. Like, I really think that if she could have gotten away from her father too, she would have been okay. Cutting that tie with Blake was huge because, you know, she started to get sober, and she started to date Reg Travis, and she was starting to get her career back on track. But I think, you know, as people do, you can relapse and still be okay. You know, an alcoholic can have a drink and then go to a meeting the next day and then be sober for the next 10 years. You know, like, slip-ups happen. And I think if she would have gotten the appropriate help and away from her father, because Blake was in jail and not accessible by her, I think she would have been okay. And, you know, unfortunately, and, you know, she had that one bodyguard that, like, would physically keep her from leaving her flat to go have a drink.
Right.
Because she had responsibilities. I really think that it was her dad. Blake said that he wasn't the one that was the cause of her death. And I agree with that. He was the cause of her going down that road. But I honestly think it was her dad that drove her to death. I think if she would have got the break that she needed from performing and recording and writing, if she would have just, but like when she was 18 and she got that first $250,000 and she's like, all I want to do is sit in my flat all day and smoke pot, you know, like if she'd have got the opportunity to do that for a while, I think she would have been okay. But yeah, but so my good was when
your
jail.
road construction when he went to jail.
My road construction was good, and it was when Blake went to jail. Unfortunately, they need to keep him there.
Apparently so.
So what was your road construction, and was it good or bad?
So it was bad. And it really is the tremendous wounds that Amy had by the time that she became famous. And I kind of listed them off, and depression, bulimia, drugs, alcohol, and the big one that we've been talking about repeatedly throughout this, the father wound.
Mm-hmm.
Her wound around her relationship with her father was so huge, and I completely agree with you. I think that her father is responsible for her death. I think that if somehow someone had been able to intervene and get him out of the picture, she would have survived.
Mm-hmm.
Or she would have at least had a much higher chance of surviving. And being the phenomenal artist now that we're missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
all right.
That's my road construction.
Well, I think it takes us straight into bycatch.
It does.
Because, you know, the other destructive thing that you had mentioned, you'd listed them off, and the only thing I think I would add to that would be the codependence.
Right. And I think that comes from, like, not having... I mean, I don't think she had healthy relationships with anybody other than maybe her two female friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, like, you know, her dad walked out on her, and she had that, and her mom, there's just not enough information to know what happened with that, other than it kind of just sounded like, you know, a single mom, and, you know, she couldn't keep control of her child or her kids. It happens all the time. Not everyone, you know, who has a working parent who, you know, and the kids run the streets, not all of them wind up, you know, drug addicts or bad people when they grow up. Some of us, you know, grow up to be productive tax member paying people of society.
So I think, you know, when I look at it, I think that it was a combination of she had all of those wounds, then she lost her grandma, and it sounds like her grandma was maybe the one adult that, like, really cared about her.
Forgot about her Nan.
Right.
Oh, I forgot.
and then just the tremendous spotlight of huge fame after Back to Black. And I think
Right.
all of those things are just gigantic. I mean, all those things together were the perfect storm.
Well, and I think we see that around artists too, in that everyone in your life, their livelihood depends on you doing what you do, and they're going to try and make that happen no matter what, even if it's indulging you in the unhealthy things that you are doing. It's their job to get you to the location, get you dressed, get you on stage, get you to perform, and then just make sure that you're happy after that. And so I think people like that, like Britney Spears and even like Whitney Houston, who was another tragic story.
Oh, God.
I think a lot of them don't have enough people in their lives that will say no to them, because everyone's livelihood depends on that person being happy in that moment and doing what they need to do. So, like, I think that's probably why there's such an epidemic of young artists who, their light gets extinguished before their time. And it's because they're just indulged, and it only gets to be a point where people start to push back is when it gets real and people start overdosing or winding up in the hospital or going to jail or hitting people with their car. You see that around celebrity a lot, where it takes that moment to make everybody stop and pay attention and try and get you the help. But unfortunately, what usually winds up happening is they put a Band-Aid over it and you just soldier on, and it never really heals. And she talked about her depression from an early age, and she didn't like the way the
drugs made her feel.
Yeah.
Which that just tells me that someone didn't spend enough time finding the right medication for her. But
yeah.
So I wrote down, you were talking about her being, a 65-year-old jazz singer in an 18-year-old's body. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down that she was out of time, as in like outside of the era and time in which she should have been born.
Yeah. Did you read anything about the inspiration for her look?
No.
So she was influenced by the soul group, the Ronettes.
Oh, okay.
And let's see, who was it? Ronnie Spector, from the Ronettes, saw a picture of Amy Winehouse and thought that it was a picture of herself from back in the day. That's how much.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
how
now
much I'm going to have to Google Ronnie Spector.
But yeah, those were big influences in her life. And then, so on the Wikipedia page, the Ronettes had that big bouffant hair. And I think,
okay.
Ronnie
Yeah, but I'm not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it either.
Yeah.
So I think Ronnie Spector has a completely different face. In fact, one of the other Ronettes I think kind of looks more like Amy Winehouse, but so Ronnie Spector, who could be argued all but invented Whitehouse's style in the first place when she took the stage at Brooklyn Fox Theater with her fellow Ronettes more than 40 years ago, was taken aback at a picture of Winehouse in the New York Post that she exclaimed, "I don't know her, I never met her, and when I saw that pic, I thought, that's me. But then I found out, no, it's Amy." She says, "I didn't have my glasses on."
That's funny. So she said repeatedly throughout the movie that she didn't know that she could handle fame, that she wasn't wanting fame, that she was just a singer. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was so prescient that she kept saying that over and over and over again.
Well, and Tony Bennett wound up saying that jazz singers like her aren't accustomed to playing
Big concert
yeah,
venues.
like yeah,
Yeah.
50,000 people. And I was like, God, that's so true, like of course he has, but most, jazz singers it's, a club with, 50 people. And I think she was happiest when she was doing that. In the early shots of her when she was singing, she looked happy. And after she started to gain fame, she never really looked happy. She never looked like she was enjoying performing or
Right.
anything like that.
Oh, I've got something kind of funny written down. So I don't know if you remember the interview where the interviewer was comparing her to Dido.
Oh, like in the very end, like her reaction in that interview.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the song "Thank You" by Dido is a great song. Talk about apples and oranges.
Right? Like, I feel like Amy was rolling her eyes going, have you even listened to my music?
No, it was really hilarious. It really cracked me up.
Oh, that was funny.
Gosh, I've just got pages and pages and pages of notes, and we've talked about a fair portion of it. Oh, there's a lyric that she wrote, and I don't know that it was ever used in a song. If it was on her first album, which I'm not super familiar with. But the lyric was, "My destructive side has grown a mile wide."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, man. You know?
Yeah.
And then someone else described her, and I think it was Mos Def. Big laugh, able to drink anyone under the table, not afraid to roll a smoke. And I thought, man, that's a Janis Joplin vibe.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is I did not even realize, because I kept thinking, that guy looks like Mos Def, and that's not what they were calling him in the
they
beginning.
weren't. Yeah.
And I can't remember.
Oh,
Mos Def is his stage name. He's Yaselin Bey.
I was going to say, I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kept looking at him going, that really looks like Mos Def. Finally, somebody, I think it was Questlove, later was like, and Mos, and I was like, it was him. Man, that would have been a great album. Like,
right.
Amy Winehouse, Questlove, the Fugees, like, that would have been epic. I really wish she could have finished that.
Yeah. I'm looking through, what else have I got?
So, I've been kind of, like, going around her Wikipedia page, and I got the feeling that she never finished school.
Oh, I think you're probably right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she was what, like 15 when her dad left, and that was kind of around the time when she stopped going to school, and then she went to a different school for like performing arts, and she got expelled for quote unquote not applying herself and piercing her own nose.
All right, as someone who was just thinking about shopping for new nose rings today, that's really funny. And by the way, I love the Monroe. I don't think I mean, I couldn't get away with it because of what I do for a living, but it looked so good on her.
So I thought it was interesting. There were some later performances where she had taken it out.
Uh-huh.
You could still see the hole.
The piercing,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but she had taken it out, and I was just wondering why.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, maybe she had to take it out because of her hospital stints.
Could
Maybe,
be.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved her whole look. It was nothing that I could copy, but of course I love a good cat eye.
A
The
good
bouffant
cat
got
eye.
to the bouffant got a little higher than I think I would have ever gotten
It
away
was
with, but
pretty big at some points.
yeah, and the statue in memory of her in Camden, it has the big bouffant.
Oh,
Uh,
I did they show that?
they didn't in the documentary,
Okay,
but
because
there's
I was
pictures
not
of it
aware.
online.
Okay.
Yeah. On her 30th birthday, when they started, they like announced the start of her foundation. An artist had been commissioned, and they unveiled the statue to her in Camden. She also did some charity work for, and I don't even want to call it charity work. And one of the like the clubs that she performed in Camden was facing having like condos or something put up near it, and it would have basically sort of ruined the aesthetic of the neighborhood. And it was like, I'm sure the club is iconic now, knowing that Amy Winehouse kind of got her start there. But she did some work to keep the houses from going up near there, so that it would sort of remain this like historic music outlet location. Yeah, I wish I could find that really quick. Yeah, I can't, unfortunately. Should have had it marked.
Sorry, I'm being silent because I don't have anything to add.
I don't either. We've talked about so much.
Oh, I'm sure I have more to add about Amy. I did again want to just bring up Mark Ronson because I loved the song Valerie that she did with him so much. And I didn't realize he was instrumental in producing Back to Black.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say that we haven't said. It just, the movie was really long. Last night I almost messaged you partway through and was like, I think I'm gonna peace out on this, but I'm glad I finished it.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it was super interesting in the beginning because you kind of got her early in life, and then and I hate to say this because I love her singing so much, but there were so many extended scenes of her singing, and then they had the lyrics over the screen, and I was like, okay, I could get this on YouTube, like I came here to see a documentary about Amy, not watch a music video you did for her, or several thereof. And so I think they probably could have cut down the 2 hours and 8 minutes with kind of just telling the story, it made it too long in the middle, but it did pick up at the end.
I'm laughing at the middle part being too long. Well, I don't think I have anything else. We didn't talk nearly as long as the movie was, which is unusual for us, but
But it was a really long movie.
It was. It was. So, I think it's your turn to pick the movie next time.
It is, and I have a few ideas.
Okay.
Nothing that I can remember right at this moment.
We may not be on a great podcasting schedule next week. I'll have to keep you posted exactly in terms of how we end up scheduling, but we will get them done.
Yeah, because we, or at least I, am supposed to be podcasting with Phil and the gang next week for Capes and Lunatics After Dark.
And I am supposed to as well, but there may be I may have other commitments.
Yes.
So I don't want to tell, and thanks, now you've outed me, because if Phil listens to this before Saturday, he'll know that there's a possibility I'm going to peace out. It just kind of depends on how my weekend evolves. Yeah. So
the two horses in the running are Promising Young Woman. Have you seen this? Okay, so it is a young woman traumatized by a tragic event in her past seeks vengeance against those who crossed her path.
It must be a movie, not a documentary.
Yes, it's a movie.
Are you trying to relive the glory of Assassination Nation? You're like, yes. Yes, I might be.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk about Assassination Nation online. It was trending on Twitter for a couple of days.
And that is because of our fabulous podcast.
And then the Trial of the Chicago 7 is the other one.
Huh.
It's the story of 7 people on trial stemming from the various charges surrounding the uprising in the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
I was going to say, I feel like I should be smarter about that, and I'm not right now, so...
1968, neither of us were live, you're forgiven. But it's basically, these BS charges against, the leader of the Black Panthers, and just, all that kind of stuff that came around in 1968, so... I don't know. I'll watch both, and I will
You'll let
you know which one's better.
Okay, that sounds good.
But I know you already have your next one in mind.
Yes, so I definitely think we should do Cry Freedom, which is the movie about Steve Biko. And it's got Denzel Washington in it.
Yes.
And Kevin Kline. And it's really old, 1987.
So everyone can go watch that and join us for that podcast. And then either watch one or both of the movies that I suggested, because I'm gonna.
So say the names again. A Promising Young Woman.
A Promising Young Woman and The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for this week. We're going to be in the thick of it here soon because we have to finish podcasting The Stand.
And we'll have Walking Dead back.
Walking Dead comes back.
Yep.
We've got some stuff with Phil coming up. Yeah, we have a lot on our plates.
We do. And it's all good.
Yeah. So until then, you girls watch out for those weirdos.
Mister, we are the weirdos.
Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.